I have been a fan of Texas, sir, for a long time.
Your own record, as someone would say.
I am on record, and I've been on record for well over
and we thank you.
10 years, because I've watched from the time I was a state party chairman in Maryland.
Right.
And being on the ground in Texas for various events, working with Republicans there, watching what Democrats were doing. And what Democrats have done very effectively in Texas, unbeknownst and not paid a lot of attention to by a lot of politically smart people, is change voter behavior on the ground. Look at the mayorships they won. Look at the city races, the citywide races they won in areas of Texas that are diverse and growing. Mm-hmm. How do you see the Tallarico campaign leaning into that? And as Simone was noting coming into this, really connecting, I think, critically important dots relative to not just, oh, Paxton's corrupt. Y'all know that. He is. But also make them pay for that corruption. Make the voters feel that pain of they're benefiting and we're not.
This message of cost and corruption cuts across all lines of demographics, all lines of age. There's something that all folks in Texas have in common, and there's this anxiety, an economic anxiety, but then also an anxiety of what they see, of not being able to get ahead, to your point, whether it's a corrupt attorney general or whether it's a government that's funded by all of this money where regular folks are left out of that conversation. Republicans have had total control of Texas for 31 years. I worked for one of the last Democrats, the great Ann Richards, who worked in Texas, who brought working people together, white working class people and working class people of color into the same place, saying, you know what, we're all together here. Almost like James Tallarico says, it ain't left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. It's the top versus the bottom. Yeah. The top has all the advantage, and that's cutting across all lines. And the last thing I'll say is, James does these selfies after all of the rallies with all the people that are there, and you'd be amazed at the number of folks that come up to him and whisper in his ear, oh, yeah. I'm a Republican. Oh, yeah. Almost like they're in the witness protection program.
Are they members of Congress? Yes, they probably are. Let's talk about the meat of the thing, specifically some very strange claims against James Tallarico and how he is responding to them. This is him on Paxton's attacks.
They say you're a vegan. I'm not a vegan. I'm an eighth-generation Texan. I've been eating barbecue since before Ken Paxton's first indictment. And this campaign basically runs on Texas barbecue. If all they have is lying about me being a vegan, I feel pretty good about our chances this November. Ken Paxton is intentionally clipping my cringy comments to distract from his career of corruption. Ken Paxton has a criminal record. I have a legislative record.
I wonder how much you think, Matt Miller, this election becomes nationalized and how much it is, in fact, about the substance of what is happening in our economy, Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran, and how much it comes down to James Tallarico's cringiest moments.
I think it's going to come down to both. Obviously, the national issues are going to be important. The war in Iran, the cost of living, the fact that Donald Trump said he would bring the cost of living down, and we've seen inflation actually go up, and the corruption issue that overhangs both this race and the national race, as I think one of you pointed out in the intro. People care more about the corruption argument when in times of economic stress, when the argument really lands that these politicians in Washington are focused on their own lives and not yours. But I think the race will turn on that, and also each candidate, what each candidate can do to try to dirty up the others. You've already seen the Republicans come out of the gate trying to attack Tallarico for comments he has made in the past. I assume that there are super PACs coming with tens of millions of dollars in the next few months to try to frame him before he can introduce himself to the people of Texas. Not well known, state representative, not yet well known to the voters of Texas, and so there's going to be a race to define James Tallarico in the same way that there's a race to define Ken Paxton. It's a little more important for Tallarico to define himself because he's more unknown than Paxton is. And so the campaign is going to have to do its job, responding to what are going to be some very nasty attacks and keeping the focus on the issues and the ways that Ken Paxton has disqualified him through a really, really long career of corruption.
Chuck made a face like, I mean, do you not agree? Ken Paxton, we went through and named all of the things, and I mean, we have a graphic. We can put his rap sheet, as my old boss Kamala Harris would say, up on the screen. He was indicted for securities fraud in 2015. That was resolved through restitution. In 2020, staffers reported him to the FBI over alleged bribery. The probe was dropped at the end of the Biden administration. 2023, he was impeached by the Texas House. He was acquitted by the Texas Senate, and the impeachment stemmed from him being reported to the FBI. And then in 2025, his wife filed for divorce on biblical grounds. Ken Paxton has insisted he's committed no wrongdoing. Given all of this, he was elected. Right after he was elected in 2015, he was indicted on securities fraud and got reelected in 2022 anyway. The voters knew all of this last night, and they still, in the primary, elected him in the runoff. It's not as though that Ken Paxton is going to be a cakewalk for the Tallarico campaign. The voters in Texas, they know who he is, and they voted for him anyway.
2 points. Last night was a microcosm of just a little sliver of the Republican Party because it was a runoff. We all know that. We're all professionals. But to your point about do they know him, let's not forget that Republicans spent $130 million on network TV beating each other up on these issues. Folks in Texas know who he is now. They've never seen that much money spent against him, Simone. To your point, he's kind of floated under the radar screen. He wins in a Republican primary. Democrats don't even take him on in the general. They just let him have it because there was no infrastructure, no candidates, all the things while they're building in these cities, to your point, Michael. But now Texans know him because they have spent $130 million beating each other up, which is one of the big differences in this race.
It is a big difference because, Matt, Republicans have spent time beating each other up and spending gobs of cash that they need stockpile for more pressing races this coming into this fall. Texas shouldn't be one of them. And yet among Republicans here in this town, just outside this window right here, they're on the Hill doing this. Their public face is, oh, we're there. Notice the Senatorial Committee put out a statement this morning, but did not mention the Republican nominee for Senate from
But
Texas.
they did scrub that website. They did scrub those hit pieces from the internet.
Didn't they?